Hello, hello, and welcome all to Love ALS and the Machine That Gave Back a Voice. My name is Jess Nani, and I run marketing and events for Blackrock Neurotech. Today's conversation sits at the intersection of two things that don't always find each other, the deeply personal and cutting edge. We're here because of one family story and because of what that story asks of all of us about access, technology, and what it means to be a human in a moment of rapid change. Our first guest, Levana Saxon, is a facilitator, strategist, and participatory educator whose life work is helping communities turn lived experience into collective wisdom. She is also BCI Superuser's Casey Harrell's partner and the person who learned to listen differently when ALS took his voice and who witnessed what changed the day a BCI gave it back. Levana brings to this conversation everything she is, a caregiver, an advocate, and someone who understands in her bones that the people closest to a problem are the ones who understand it best. Our second guest, Taryn Southern, is a storyteller and strategist who has spent her career at the frontier of technology and human potential, from the world's first AI composed album to an award winning documentary on brain computer interfaces. As an advisor to Blackrock Neurotech, she has been part of bringing Casey's story to the world, and she joins us today to help us think about what comes next. Now, before I pass it off to Levana and Taryn, I'd like to draw your attention to the Q&A box in the bottom menu of your screen. As time allows, we'll do an audience Q&A at the end of the discussion. So drop your questions and we'll get to it we'll get to as many of them as we can. Taryn, Levana, all of you.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you for that wonderful intro. And Levana, it's so good to have you here. I have been blessed to be able to interview you extensively once before when we filmed our latest Casey video, which we released this week, and also have had a number of phone conversations with you. And I've just been so inspired, doesn't even really cut it.
Mm.
Inspired by how you live your life with such unbelievable circumstances. And we really wanted this conversation to focus on you and what it is like to be the caretaker, the advocate, the activist, living with a partner with ALS. Because there's a lot of nuance there that often doesn't get shared. So we're going to dive in today. And I think just first and foremost, for people who aren't familiar with your story, hopefully they've seen the video and that's why they're here today. The little video we shot, which gives them a little bit of a tiny look, a glimpse into your life. But tell us first about you and your illustrious career and who you were. Who was Levana Saxon before ALS?
Oh, thank you, Taryn, so much for that very sweet and kind introduction. It has been a joy to get to know you and your team. Before I share about myself, I want to just share on behalf of my family, just some deep gratitude for everybody on this call, everybody that is not on this call that has played even a small part in creating the technology that allows my husband to talk. It is an absolute phenomenon that we know involves years and years of countless individuals, patience and sacrifice and hard work. And the large majority of those people, I'm sure, don't get credited. And we think about them. We hold a lot of gratitude in our hearts for what we're able to be a part of. Um, and it's exciting to be able to be in a conversation with some of those folks today. So I just
I
wanted to
know they're, thank you. And I know they're really excited to hear from you. Oh, it's
I'm
okay.
like,
You
I
can
thought
talk
I could
all
at
you want.
least make it to like halfway through the conversation. I know. Jess told me this was a normally a slot held for academic conversations, of which I am not I'm familiar with, but that this was supposed to be casual. So I hope everyone is also in on that and can join me in a really casual space today. Because
Very much so. We're just here for whatever comes our way with you.
great. Um, so I think before I can talk about well, yeah, okay. I can talk a little bit about who I was before ALS. And honestly, we just hit our 7-year mark. And they say, your cells regenerate every 7 years. So I had this like very intense moment of feeling like, oh my God, there is no physical part of me left
Yep.
that was pre-ALS. It has consumed our lives so fully. Um, while we are really young, relatively speaking, for families in our situation, Casey and I both led incredibly full lives. And so at least we don't live with the sort of constant regret of like, oh, if only I had done more, or, made my mark in this way. Um, my career started as a youth organizer, as a young person, doing a lot of environmental organizing and global climate organizing. I worked for a stint with UNEP um, and lots of different like youth education training programs. And I sort of moved that into a career in adult training and adult education and facilitation, and started a consulting organization and business that for years did, organizational development consulting, equity, diversity, inclusion consulting with different companies and organizations, just really working to align an organization or company's values with both its external impact in the world and its internal impact. And part of that also involves ensuring that the people who are most impacted by the work of an organization are really at the table as experts. And I do that now by coaching and teaching people in doing research who are most impacted by an issue, usually in planning contexts, neighborhood revitalization, helping residents form teams and do their own planning and needs assessments. And that has taken a pretty large backseat, although I'm still doing it minimally, because I have a lot of joy there to my life as a parent. We have a 7-year-old. And then, as probably most of you know, right after our daughter Aya was born, Casey's symptoms began. And in many ways, I feel like I'm still postpartum. For anyone who's given birth on the call, there's like this, this period where you're like, okay, I'm just going to hunker down and not get much sleep. And I'm up every 20 minutes nursing or, taking care of something. But it's all over in 2 years. I get my life back, and, my kid will be more independent, and I'll get to like go back to the gym and see my friends and go to brunch and like, and that never really happened for me. Like I'm still in that like up all night kind of postpartum vibe in our house. And I'm, you know, pretty burnt out. But we can talk about that.
And we'll definitely get to that. It's
Yeah.
living with 7 years of fight or flight takes its toll, right?
Yeah, it does.
I'm still incredibly impressed by everything that you are managing. When I sat down with you at your house, what was it now, a couple of months ago, we went through all of the different roles that you've taken on in the
Mm,
past 7 years. So maybe you could give everyone a little bit of insight into what that actually looks like.
sure. I
And your
think,
roles are even more than the average ALS caregiver because of the brain-computer interface study.
yeah, yeah, there's a lot. So, I think what people don't see, you know, this is true for anyone. It's like when somebody wants something from you, they assume they're the only person who needs something from you at that time. And, so on any average day, I'm like running an HR office because we now have, I don't actually know how many, I think 7 different people working for us part-time as caregivers, assistants, supporters. And you would think that would be enough, but we're still hiring more people right now. I'm fielding applications because we really do need round-the-clock support here, and we don't quite have that yet. Um, I'm managing, like right now, we just got denied by IHSS in-home health services, which is supposed to
Mm.
provide, a tiny fraction, but meaningful fraction of care. And I'm having to write my congressperson to help me advocate because our social worker messed up the application. And so we got denied and now have to wait another 3 months. It's like, and then, all the Medi-Cal and Medicare nonsense around what drugs they'll approve and not approve. So like Casey is very dependent on a particular pain patch, and CVS just decided that it didn't need to order it in advance. And so we're waiting like a full 4 more days where Casey is like going without any pain coverage, and it's causing such a severe crisis. Like I almost called the EMTs the other night. And he's like, today having a really hard time with coughing, which is kind of part of not having that stress coverage. So there's like always medical stuff to manage and people to manage. And then, I'm a parent of a very lively, active daughter who needs a lot right now as a 7-year-old. And I have a number of, clients that I'm managing, and then I've got all the caregiving. So even when we are fully staffed, there's a number of caregiving tasks that that only I can do. So one of them is like every time Casey gets plugged in and every time we unplug him, I'm the only person that's like FDA approved to clean the pedestals, and I have to do a whole sterile procedure to ensure that there's not bacterial infections that can get to his brain, and managing those supplies and the the space for that. And then yeah, there's a whole litany of other caregiving tasks that nobody else can do simply because they don't have the 1,000 hours that it takes to get used to doing it.
And
Case,
when did you take that on? When did you decide to take that on? At what point in the disease progression?
which part?
The actual like 1,000 hours to be able to get to.
Oh, well, no, I mean, I've always like, that's never been a choice.
Right.
Caregiving for a spouse is not a choice. Well, my choice would be to turn Casey over to a hospital and run away. I would be arrested from what I've understood. Like it is actually, as his spouse, I have a legal obligation to care for him for free. As
Mhm.
a social worker recently told me on the phone, that I can either I have to be working full time for us to get any government assistance, or I have to be fully too disabled to care for him, or I have to be caring for him full time without any assistance. And I'm like, well, I do all of those things. I am actually on disability. I'm getting sick from this work. And, I'm working 16 hours a day and I'm caregiving for him. She's like, I know, but on paper you have to choose one. I'm like, okay, how do I do that?
How much of the bureaucracy of this is preventing you from being able to, I suppose, live the best possible life that you can with Casey?
Yeah,
If
just
you were to kind of break
that's
out
it.
the various issues, right, surrounding.
Is so much like even though we have the capacity to communicate and hang out and have a nice conversation, like it keeps getting put off because we always have like transactional conversations to handle like more applications and letters and government assistance things and supply ordering mishaps, and like the healthcare system, everyone knows, is already problematic. And once you are in the world of severe disability, as I've discovered, we're like really living in a different world. Like there's just so many cracks we fall through, and there's no systems that exist to really support us. The We're on a 3-year waiting list to get actual support from the state of California, it's called the HCBA waiver. Um, and that itself is under threat because there's currently I believe it's a bill that was just pushed this week saying that humans that are disabled no longer have a right to live in their homes, which is that specific right to live in their homes is the only thing that triggers this state cash flow. So they're trying to dissolve that. So we may never get it, but the only way to get to the top of the waiting list is if Casey was institutionalized for 60 days. Casey would die within 2 weeks of being in an institution.
Because of
That's just
the level of
what
care
happens.
or
He
what?
needs, he needs one-on-one, very focused care.
Yeah.
There is no institution that can provide that. Usually at best, people have 9 patients that they're running around between. It is long understood in the ALS community that people die very fast when they're in an institution. So we're just not willing to put them in one. And because of that, we can't get this waiver. We're like, he's too disabled to qualify for the in-home health services, if that makes any sense at all. Anyways, so
Oh,
that's
it's
just a
crazy.
little snippet of the crazy that
Yeah.
we're,
And I
we're
do want to make sure, Jess, if you
wading
can
through.
put, it's a good segue to just put the GoFundMe link for Levana and her family into our chat so that anyone who's watching now or on our video, if you feel called to support, we would so appreciate that. You guys do these clinical trials for no compensation. It's part of just the way that these work, right? But it's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
And it breaks my heart that you have to go through so many loopholes. And we're going to come back to the GoFundMe and talk a little bit more about what that support would look like. But I also want to um, double click a little bit on where he's at in
yeah,
the disease progression right now. Because I think a
yeah,
lot of people, they sort of know about ALS and the final stages, but they're
yeah,
maybe not so aware of what it looks like at the stage that you're at currently.
absolutely. It's rare, most people don't make it to this stage. And so it's rare actually. So, I mean, first of all, so everyone here knows a little bit about what ALS looks like. It is so different than what we first thought it was and what we read it was. Like everyone knows it's a motor neuron disease. It breaks down your communication between your brain and your muscles. Um, and so we thought, okay, losing movement is going to suck, but like we can manage that. Paralysis is something people manage. If it was only paralysis, this would be 1,000 times easier than what it is. What we didn't understand going into it is that it also causes symptoms like profuse oral secretions that he can't manage and then he chokes on all day. So why I can't be more than 15 minutes away from the house is I have to like dive in with a deep suction that none of our caregivers know how to do and like literally save his life. And that's happening maybe once a week. Um, the all of the muscles required for the entire digestive process from soup to nuts from beginning to end are all fatigued and don't quite work right. So like the level of care and support and symptom management that has to go into that is really extreme. There's also intense pain and spasticity. Officially, ALS is not called a disease of pain, but the musculoskeletal issues that happen when your body is degrading in the way that it does
Mhm.
causes, as Casey calls it, when I asked him recently at a hospital appointment, like, how would you describe your pain? I have to write it down. And he said, it's from a 1 to an 8 at any given moment in the sort of a fluid, like it just kind of, it's all over it, any part of my body, all of the time. Um, and that, and then there's like the sleeping issues and then, of course, what we're going to get into is like the communication, like losing all of the mechanisms that go into breathing. Well, that's another one. And then communication is massive. Casey is now dependent on oxygen and a non-invasive ventilator 24/7. And when I have to remove his mask to do oral care or to do deep suction, it's a stressful moment. We have to deal, we can only
You
have his
can't
mask
breathe.
off for like 30 seconds. He can breathe very little on his own. And we're having to kind of constantly monitor his blood oxygen saturation levels. Um, so air hunger is something we're having to keep a constant eye on, and it can come and go depending on, the meds he's taken. Sometimes they're too sedating, depending on if how much he's been coughing, how irritated his airways are. We
Mhm.
recently had this incredible procedure done on Wednesday, that I could spend the next hour talking about, but basically they vacuumed out, a third of his lungs was filled with mucus, and they were able to vacuum it out, which is amazing.
Did that provide relief?
Yeah. So he's breathing better, but not, he's still on 24/7 support, and but not as air hungry, and with less constant risk. So it's really good. Um, oh, this is so apropos. So Casey's the HDMI cable that plugs into the Blackrock
Uh-huh.
device just broke.
Oh
It's bad,
no. Oh no.
which happens all the time.
I know we are aware of this little
They
ball.
used to be $800 a pop, and so
Yeah.
when they broke, we just couldn't
Yeah.
talk because
Yeah.
BrainGate couldn't supply us enough as fast as we were going through them. Um, but they made an adjustment to the FDA. In the FDA, they had to file a whole thing saying, like, we don't need these HDMI cables that cost like $8 a piece to be sterile, because as soon as they're out of the
Mm,
box, they're not sterile for the rest of the time we're using them.
right.
So that was a huge change. I don't know who helped us get there, but thank you. Okay, there's another cord. It's in the black box, I believe.
The Blackrock box.
Yeah, it's not there.
And if
Look,
you need to take a minute, Levana, to go find a cord, I'm happy to keep the
um,
conversation going.
look in the back. Did you look in the basket?
Not the basket.
Look in the big brain gate basket of all the supplies. I think there's one in there. There's an old one in there, but what you want to find is one that's in a plastic bag still that looks like it hasn't been opened. Yeah, we should have at least one.
Cool. This is actually, an unfortunate but appropriate
I
foray
know.
to the next part of what we were going to talk about, which is the brain-computer interface
Yeah.
and all of the amazing things and all the frustrating things that come along with, using an experimental device from your bedroom.
Yeah.
From our very first conversation, we were talking about these HDMI cables, and it's so interesting how these little things can completely upend Casey's day and his ability to actually use the device. So I'd love to first hear about all of it from your perspective. I always joke with the company that you're basically a part-time neuroscientist at this point, because you're the one running this cutting edge technology out of the bedroom. I've seen you. You're very adept with the systems.
Thanks. Well,
Um,
and also I have to say that, like, I have the best IT support in the planet. Like, when I call Nick Card because we're having a technical issue,
yeah,
he usually picks up before it's rung twice. Even at 2 in the morning, he's right there. And
great.
and he's made it possible. The whole setup originally had like 200 or so steps to even get all the computers logged into, to get the whole
Him
system
set
up
up.
and running.
Mm-hmm.
And they reduced that down to, I think I have a written list of maybe 30 steps or something. And that's, it takes us like 15 minutes with calibration and everything. So that, yeah, that has been a labor of love. It's been a mutually beneficial arrangement, right? Like, they're getting more data than they could have ever dreamed of, and we're getting more time with the device that we could have ever dreamed of. So it's been fantastic in
And
that.
maybe for context for anyone who is not aware, most of the studies that are done on BCI participants are done in a lab. So they actually have to drive to an institution, which of course, given their conditions, can be extremely challenging. And
Yeah.
then they don't get to go home with the device. But you are one of only a few patients in the world that actually have the ability to use the device from home. And it's my understanding that Casey has used his BCI on more than any other patient in the world,
Yes.
which is
I
absolutely incredible.
yeah. So, well, I want to go back a second, as long as they don't need me. I was starting to talk about the speech issue,
Yes.
like
Okay, great.
why and how speech starts to disappear. Um, Casey was a fast progressor. When he was diagnosed in May of 2020, right after COVID started, they were looking at how much he had already progressed within the first year and deduced that he would likely die within 2 years, that he was on the fast end of fast progressors and that potentially even die within a year. And we have pulled a rabbit out of our hats and figured out how to keep him going. And that in itself is a different TED Talk. We can talk about how we do that. But
Medical ninja.
just to say that like he started losing his speech really early on, like before, you know, before our daughter was 2. His speech, he was right around the time I remember they turned 2. He could no longer, he couldn't type, right? He's not bulbar onset, he's limb onset. So he lost his ability to type before he lost his ability to speak. So he was able to work using like a dragon dictation. And by July 2020, dragon dictation couldn't understand him anymore. So then he was hiring my little brother.
And maybe to explain, what is dragon dictation?
Oh, it's just like an early version of the apps that like a voice act where you talk and the computer picks up what you're saying. The so for a while my little brother could understand him and was taking some dictation so he could keep working. And then we hired his organization finally decided to pay for the accommodation of hiring someone to translate and do dictation for him so he could continue working. And by I want to say 2021, 22, only myself, our daughter, and his personal assistant could understand him at all. And I would say like and what this part I really want you all to understand and why we think speech is the most important BCI project out there. Like understanding is an overstatement. Like every time he said anything, it would take anywhere from a minute to 10 minutes to understand what he was saying. He would have to repeat himself over and over and over again. And like that in itself was incredibly stressful. Often he was just trying to communicate a critical need, like you rammed my wheelchair, my foot into the bed or something. Can you please pull it back? And I would just be standing there being like, what are you saying? I don't know. Meanwhile, his foot is totally getting crushed. So and then there's just like the isolation and the inability to really advocate for himself with healthcare workers. Well, the way people's ableism shows up when somebody's speech starts to go is next level. Like I have 20 years working in diversity, equity, inclusion, training people on, sexism, racism, ableism. I was blown away by how little I actually understood of how ableism shows up and how prevalent and common it is, and how the nicest person can instantly just dismiss Casey's humanity simply because his voice is not what they expected out of it, and take away his agency, jump in with needles, with all kinds of things without getting his consent, just to assume that his brain is dead because his tongue isn't working. So the list goes on, but just to say by the time we had an opportunity to even entertain joining this study, it wasn't really a question. Like the stakes were pretty low at that point. Like anything was better than the life we were living, even with all the risks that it came with.
So you were supportive of the decision.
Very secretly.
Yes.
Casey is a Southern gentleman and will always do his level best to figure out what I want and try to do that, which drives me crazy, um, but understandable. And so I decided to stay as neutral as possible so that his decision was really his, because I didn't want him to go for it and then regret it and then be able to blame me for that regret. Or not go for it and regret it and feel
Good
like
marital strategy.
Yeah, so I was
channeling.
like, you know what? This is I want you to like really own this decision and not be able to look at me as being part of that. But yeah, of course I was for it 100%. Um,
And
yeah.
that decision required full brain surgery,
Yes. Which,
implantation.
which came with, the brain surgery itself came with a huge risk of getting a emergency trach, and that was what we were most afraid of. What I didn't know before being in this world is that any kind of severe surgery like that requires general anesthesia, which requires intubation. And for a patient as advanced as Casey is, intubation, the extubation can irritate your airways so much that there's a very high percentage chance that you could end up needing an emergency tracheotomy to
Mm.
keep a patient breathing. With ALS, even though tracheotomies are reversible, with ALS, they're generally not, because as soon as you stop losing something, very quickly you lose your abilities to use it ever again. And with a tracheotomy comes just a very severe elevation in care need from where we were at managing with me and the assistant and just like one other person in the evenings to 24/7 monitoring at $45 an hour was like the base rate for starting pay for tracheotomy trained caregivers. So, that adds up. Not something we were prepared for. We were incredibly nervous about it. Um, but that, we decided to take that risk.
And you did it. And how long after the surgery was the first hookup?
Yeah. Casey remembers all this much better than I do because he's
It's
got a
okay if you give
brain
average.
for numbers. But it felt like a matter of weeks, maybe a month.
Yeah.
And there was a really funny moment where David Brandman was in the recovery room with us at UC Davis, to just schedule his first in-home visit. Um, and we had expected to be scheduling this in-home visit, but we thought it was just a medical visit and that maybe they would turn on the lights and kick the tires around. But they had told us many times to expect nothing, that it was going to be 6 to 9 months before Casey was actually able to use it. Um,
Wow. Wow.
yeah. And that little kick the tires around visit was actually the one caught on video that everyone
Where he speaks for the first time.
for the first time. Yeah, it just worked right away. It was amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So incredible. And so I suppose we could then talk a bit about how that changed your role
Yeah.
in Casey's life, the moment that he was able to start communicating again. And I don't know how long it took for the setup to be introduced into your home and into your bedroom and for this
Yeah.
regular routine. But I know now he spends most of his time in the device. And so how has
Um,
that shifted your role as a caretaker? And also how has it shifted your role with the research? Because now there's so much that you're seeing in the bedroom. Like, is there anything that you're seeing in the bedroom working with this technology that the clinics or the lab simply don't? That would be helpful and interesting for those making the technology, developing the studies to know about.
um, that is a really big question. I don't remember how long it was. I don't get a lot of sleep, so life is a bit of a blur. But it was, there's a while of it working out in the living room, just the like 2 days a week, which was the expectation originally, where we would get like an hour at each one of these sessions to use it for personal use. Um, and then very quickly, BrainGate started making it possible for us to use it, um, in the bedroom and set up a personal use setup. I don't remember how long that took, maybe 6 months, maybe less. Um, I mean, the difference for us overnight, I remember it was like all of a sudden I get a co-parent. Like very suddenly, our house gets to have music again. We get to have noise because the other part about enabling Casey to have any communication whatsoever is that the house had to be dead silent because his diaphragm was so weak that any voice that came out that I was trying to understand was actually really, 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 really low volume.
Mhm.
And our daughter wasn't able to communicate with him at all at that point. So I went from having to like, take 20 minutes of silence to like understand what his plan is for the next 20 minutes or whatever, to be able to like shout across the house, "Hey, Casey, Aya needs a story. Can you read them a story now?" Like it was so different. It's such a night and day difference. It brought back a level of normalcy in our weird, totally abnormal life, that was severely missing. And it brought Casey back to life. I have to say, like, by the time Casey got it, he had become a bit of a shell of himself for how much he was getting mistreated by everybody, me included, because of how little we were able to understand what his needs were. Um,
Sure.
and, once he was able to really start talking all the time, it was like he was back. Like he was really, really, really present in the room again in a really different way. Um, there was more to your question. Can you remind me?
No, I thought that was, I mean, it's beautiful. I think maybe there's not an answer for this question, but given that there are engineers on this call,
Yeah.
you are in basically the data headquarters. So you see how he's
Yeah.
interacting with the machine probably more than any scientist has because of
Yeah.
the sheer
Sure.
volume
Okay.
of
Yeah.
time.
There's a few
Is
things.
there lessons, learnings from that you think would be
Yeah.
important to impart on researchers, scientists, people building the technology? That
Yes. And Casey should be asked this question.
great.
From my perspective, there's a few things. What it takes him to generate a sentence is not the same thing that it takes you and I to generate a sentence. So it is true that he's just attempting to speak and speech occurs, but to really get the decoder to be as accurate as it is, he has to be thinking, he has to construct a sentence before he says it in such a way that he knows the AI decoder will most likely interpret it, right? Use the kind of words that it will most likely use a sentence structure that it will most likely understand. But there's a bunch of other strategies he does that I think everybody
A
else
big cognitive load.
to use this for speech should be trained in, to be able to increase their success with and accuracy with usage. Um, and I wonder from an engineering perspective, like what could be done to train the AI decoder, so it matches more with the cadence and conversational, speech habits of the user itself, so almost like a tailored speech structure to make that simpler. That would be really cool. Um, there's something really interesting that happens when he sleeps that I really wish everybody could see. Or we could get like a sleep researcher out here. But I think it's uncovering there could be a lot more learned about the human brain,
Mm.
uh, just from this angle. Because once he's asleep and he's not intending to create speech, some, words are getting produced that are likely just getting produced because there's brain waves that he's producing that are similar enough to what the decoder is predicting that it creates words. But sometimes the words are real sentences that match with the dreams that he's having. And it would be
Oh.
really cool to learn more about that.
That's wild. And that's
Yeah.
interesting too, because when people are always so curious, how do these devices work? Are they just reading
Yeah.
thoughts going on in the background? And we always have to explain, no, you have to actually be intentionally thinking about speaking, and there's a
Yeah.
certain process, almost like riding a bike. And it becomes more intuitive, but it's
Yeah.
still an
It's still
active.
a lot of work, right? However, there is a decoder one of the researcher uses that is able to snag words without his intention, right? And there's, as we know, there's the technology that some companies are taking advantage of that could read people's thoughts without their consent. And we are
Interesting.
terrified of this. Like
Yeah.
it is ironic. Casey spent his entire career um, campaigning for social justice, human rights, and environmental justice. And often the targets of his campaigns were tech companies. And we are very worried that the research that he is contributing to might contribute to a future in which our privacy is threatened, and that he and other people like him lose their basic human rights of being able to have their thoughts be their own and decide who gets to hear what they say and who doesn't. Um, and
And
so
what do you,
really, yeah.
so no, keep going. I was going to ask a question, but please.
What BrainGate has done is created like a privacy panel. Like, so there's a button that he can use the Tobii eye gaze device to click when we want to have a private conversation just with our family that we don't want researchers to be pouring
Reading.
through. Like, but he doesn't use it that often, but it's fantastic that we have the ability to use that. Um, so we feel fine with the privacy that we have been provided. But to just be clear, we're aware that the technology is moving at a breakneck pace and it's using data from his brain, and that there is a really real threat without the right guardrails in place and state policies in place that, you know, he would be contributing to the deepest violation of a human privacy that could be. So we're just really, really concerned about that, and hope that, and we know that Blackrock is also, and yeah, just hope everyone can join us in working towards a future where people's human rights are respected in that regard.
100%. And I know you've had a couple of conversations with Alana, who has been driving some of our ethics efforts at Blackrock. And even though we're not running the research studies, there are a lot of things that we can still be doing to set the conversation in the right direction. And I know that we're really looking forward to hearing more from you specifically and some of the other participants as well about what those safeguards need to be and how we can start facilitating those
Yeah.
conversations. I wasn't even aware about this other software technology that can pick up ancillary words. Is this currently in use?
Yeah, there's I don't know how they switch between decoders, but there's one of the researchers um is, and she published, I can't remember where she published, there was an article in the New York Times about it.
Okay.
There's other participants who she was working with more than Casey, but she also worked with Casey. And she was able to uh get,
Parse other constructions,
yeah, language
inner
can just come
dialogue.
without the intention, just thinking it,
Wow.
right? And
Wow.
that actually can happen for Casey as well. Sometimes when he's reading words on a page, text will pop up and he's not intending to speak it. He's not mouthing it, or he's
Mhm.
not intending to mouth the words. He's just reading it. And what he's reading will appear. So even with his decoder that he's using that is not intended to pick up thoughts, only intended speech, it still leaks out on occasion.
Sure. Well, this is the product of our brain being so complex, right? And different neurons speaking to different neurons in different
Right.
ways that we can't anticipate. And
That's right.
so, in some ways, I suppose the subjective research on these ancillary words is a little, in some ways, you kind of need it to happen to know how to prevent it from happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I think,
Why, how
yeah.
is that working, and how can we ensure that that
That's right. And
guardrails?
I think what she's created is really cool, because I think it'll be a great technology for some people who, their particular disability makes it harder to produce speech
Yeah.
from intended speech.
Yeah.
So she created a password, a mental password, so
Okay.
that the participant has to say shitty, shitty, bang, bang, like words you would never just say in conversation before it's allowed to pick up your thoughts.
Okay.
It's cool.
Good. That's great.
For us, what is worrisome though is that just the fact that we know how to do that, there's nothing stopping a company from taking that technology and quickly turning it into, headphones that a consumer has no idea is like picking up every thought they have, you know, in a way, and like using that for all kinds of nefarious reasons. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's
absolutely.
it is freaky.
Beyond the data
Yeah.
privacy issues, what are other issues that you're personally concerned about that you like to advocate for? I know one of the things that we spoke about a few weeks back was just the fact that most people with ALS can't get access to this technology. Um,
Yeah.
so when you
Thank
sit
you.
with the various gaps in the
Yeah.
field,
Yeah.
knowing the people in this room, what would you want them to do about it?
Great. I mean, the biggest piece, because I'm part of all of these groups of, online ALS caregiver and ALS family groups, we are, as miserable as we are doing so great. And it is heartbreaking that every other ALS family doesn't have access to what we have. And we just want everybody who wants it to get it as soon as possible, and as cheaply as possible, in in a way that is as usable as possible, ideally, something that people can leave their bedroom for, or with, and be able to continue to communicate outside of a huge stack of computers, but
We're
also to
working on it.
I know, make it
We're working on it.
but to also have it, get that FDA approval fast tracked and that insurance negotiated, and and cutting the costs down so that people can just get this,
Yeah,
and have their lives meaningfully transformed and lengthened for those who want to lengthen them.
yeah.
Um, The other issue, ironically, for years, Casey worked on data center expansion. It's like the largest, well, we're both climate activists. That's how we met. And, the largest growing frontier of fossil fuel use that's driving climate change is from data center expansion.
Mhm.
And I know BCI is likely a drop in the bucket of the AI data center expansion, but AI data center expansion is still, it's beginning to touch everybody. There's more and more communities that we're in connection with that are having to fight, data centers coming into their land. It's really wild. And I don't know what the intersection is with you all and data center expansion, but I know that this is like quickly becoming the thing that I'm seeing everybody I am in connection with worried about and talking about and trying to figure out how to fight. And people who are negative about data center expansion are already getting criminalized by the federal government. And so even just decriminalizing people having a voice around whether their backyard turns into a data center, is, another piece that we care about a lot.
Makes sense. Given Casey and your history, I can see why that would be important to you.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that if Casey would like to join us on this call, that we have time to bring him in. And if he can't totally understand, I don't know what the current situation is, or if you want to
I don't know either. I think he is
check. If he's
on.
on the chat, Casey, you can feel free to text me and let me know if you would like to join. We'd
uh,
love to have you, but no pressure.
I
Um,
just realized what time it is. Did we want to do Q&A for
we can
more
still do Q&A as well.
Tracy?
Yeah, absolutely. We can go over because we
Okay.
started a little bit behind, so we can keep going over. No rush.
Okay.
But Jess, if there have been any questions
Yeah.
from people watching that you'd like to ask, just go ahead and leave it in the chat, and I'll make sure to get to that. And in the meantime, I really want to just double click on the GoFundMe that you set up because this disease has been such an incredible financial burden for your family. I was kind of, up to my eyeballs in
Yeah.
just listening to the costs that you broke down for me when we sat down last month. It was like, I don't know how anyone can get through this.
We have, well, and we've had such incredible, generous support from our community. We've fundraised $170,000. This is the second huge fundraiser we've done. And we've kind of drained people in our community. Like, we need to find new donors. We've also drained everything we fundraised. So out of the $170,000 that
You're done.
we began fundraising in December, it is gone. As of this month, I'm going to have to be dipping back into a loan.
And so the total cost per year of keeping Casey alive,
$400,000.
$400,000. Wow, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very important to us that we do whatever we can to help you guys through that and get the neurotech neuroscience community aware of these costs, not only because it's important to keep Casey alive, but he's contributing so much to our space.
Yeah. And he's doing all of this for free. I'm doing all of this for free.
All of it, because and the way, and for anyone on the call who's not familiar, although it's maybe it's self-explanatory, but with these clinical trials, they cannot pay participants because then that would create a financial incentive that would skew the trial. And so,
although I would have to say, as people are, you ask what other solutions, I
yes,
think
please.
as people are designing new trials and, filling out their FDA forms, it was a criteria for Casey to be eligible for the trial for him to have a partner who was available to do all of the work of getting him connected and cleaning his pedestals and doing all of that. However, that is all free labor. And so
And clearly you're not getting benefit because you're
I
not
get
the implant.
zero benefit. And if anything, yeah, it's kind of a pain in my ass. It takes hours a day. And yeah.
That feels like
So
that should be an
that's time away
addendum.
from parenting and put time away from actually earning money. If the spouse caregiver or home caregiver could be part of the study, if they're going to be doing so much of the labor in a home study, I think that makes sense. Like they have since adjusted the study to make me FDA approved to be able to plug him in and, don and doff the system myself. But that's all still considered like I have like permission to do it, but it's all free labor. So any way to make that a part, make the spouse caregiver a paid part of a team, I imagine would be possible given how closely a person in my role has to be involved.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. Great. Well, it sounds like Casey is able to join.
Is able to join. Yes,
I think he's
absolutely.
just waiting to be let in. So Jess, do you see a way to let Casey in?
I'm promoting him now to a panelist.
Okay, just give us a minute.
Do you want me to come in the room? I don't think so.
So we'll bring him in. Have a couple questions for him.
There we go.
Welcome, Casey the turtle. He's got a turtle emoticon emoji.
Yeah.
And we also had a couple of questions from the audience, so I'll share them now while Casey gets set up.
Great.
And if either one of you want to take them, great, go for it. First question, thank you for sharing your story. I wanted to know how long Casey has had the device, and if you've noticed a degradation in the functioning of it across time. Thank you so much for this space.
Great question. It was implanted July of 2017. No, sorry, July 17th, 2023. Sorry. I had the 17 in my head. I think there was a degradation of one of the neuroplexes and it was swapped, I believe. It was like, if you're familiar, they turn green when they're fully plugged in, and one of them was no longer turning green. And I believe that one got swapped out.
Did that affect signal quality?
Barely. I
Okay.
mean, honestly, it's just so good. Like he even was only on one pedestal for a while because I and potentially some other caregivers had bumped the front pedestal a number of times and created a fracture in his skull. And it had to get moved and like pushed over to a part of his skull that had more integrity. Um, and during that entire process, he was able to use it with,
Okay.
some loss of accuracy, but was still able to use it functionally for a while. They
Sure.
quickly created a decoder that could work with just one, which was amazing. Um, you know, yeah. I
I mean, that's
I
great.
don't know why the front one degraded, but not the back one. I don't know if
Sure.
it's a time thing. That also has had a Pseudomonas infection that we're now treating with a localized oxygen,
Yeah.
because the ongoing antibiotics were really harsh. So we were able to switch to like a mini, like hyperbaric chamber over his head that we apply every day.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a whole other part of the care required.
Okay, and then the second question was that you mentioned speech being the most important use of the BCI. Can you also speak to the importance or utility of general computer control, cursor and typing for Casey? Do you view this as a
I really
luxury or
want,
a
yeah,
necessity?
I really want Casey to be able to jump in on that one. It's
Great.
huge. It's huge. It's enabled him um to work, right? It's one thing to be able to talk, but when you're in front of a computer, you want to be able to write emails and texts, open programs, and the cursor
Absolutely.
control that he does enables him to do that.
Well,
Um,
I'll come back to that question then with Casey, but I think we have a couple of questions that we already had teed up for him. So, Casey, if you're ready, then I'll go ahead and ask the
why,
first.
Casey, are you there? We're assuming that you're not just because your video's off. But chime in whenever you want. So his video isn't, it's not giving us the option. Oh, it's not, sorry, you guys need to let his video come on. It's not giving him the option, apparently, to be video on.
Do you want to try clicking on do you see the little arrow next to the video emoticon? And if it'll allow you to select a camera from your computer?
It's just giving us audio. It's just giving audio. You know what? Why don't I can just come in. Why don't I just come in?
Great.
Yeah, I'm just
We'll
gonna
see you in there.
my computer in there. Okay. The sound might get funky for a second
It's
once we
okay.
figure this out. Okay. Oh, you gotta mute that one. Yeah.
So while they're getting set up, I'm going to just look at a couple more questions that were sent in. One of the questions was, what other assistive devices and tools does Casey use that you view as the most important? And it doesn't necessarily need to be communication based. So we'll try to get to that as well with Casey. Hey, Casey. I think you're currently on mute, so I don't know which computer.
Yes.
There we go. Hello. Thank you for joining. It's good to see you.
Hello, everyone. How are you all?
I'm doing well. Just really enjoyed spending the last hour with Levana, talking about all of the things. I don't know how much of it you were able to listen to, but saved a couple of questions for you. And it looks like we also have some from the audience that they'd love for you to answer. So we'll get through we'll get through what we can, but I thought we'd start with the first question, which
I
uh,
hear everything.
great. We'll start with the first question, which is you've spent your career fighting systems where the rule is that no one person is the story, and now you are the story. You are the face of a technology that only a few people get access to. And while the FDA has fast-tracked investigational programs for devices like this, commercial approval still leans very hard on safety and function with patients' lived experience as a secondary input. So I wanted your thoughts as an activist. Where would you put the pressure? Would you put it on making the FDA faster or making patient experience mandatory as real evidence as we try to commercialize these devices?
And I'll just describe as he's typing his sentence, and Casey, I'll shut up as soon as you press play. But so people understand what he's doing, there's a screen above the Macintosh desktop computer that he's using for Zoom. That is a monitor where he's able to read the speech that he's producing and then also edit it. So once he produces it, as probably most people know here, he then is able to use like a Toby system eye gaze
I think
to.
it is kind of both because I think that patient experience is paramount to being able to get the Food and Drug Administration to move faster.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was actually reviewing the stats on patient experience and how much of that was actually defining whether or not products move forward, and was pretty surprised to see that in many cases, like less than 40% of the devices were including patient lived experience as evidence. And I think in your case, it's should be central, right? Like absolutely central. Um, and maybe this goes really nicely into the question from one of our audience members who said, you mentioned speech, or I guess Levana had mentioned speech being the most important use of the BCI. I think that you, Casey, have echoed that sentiment. Can you also speak to the utility or importance of general computer control, the cursor control and typing? Do you view that as a luxury or as a necessity?
absolutely an asset because without this, I am not able to operate a personal computer with any level of independence. I will have to try to ask someone else to move the computer cursor to every little thing. So being able to do both is incredibly important to my independence and my ability to work, or simply call a friend or on the phone.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes
Which
sense.
I'll just add in as part of him having privacy. Because
Mm,
for years, every single correspondence would have to involve one of us to help him have that correspondence. And so he couldn't have a private conversation with his sister or like, talk to his friend about how hard his wife is being or what, whatever, like, because I was always having to be part of it. So yeah, privacy is greatly enabled by having both.
of course. And I think our next question actually sort of taps on that, which is that talking, even though it's available to you via the BCI, which is fantastic, it still requires significant effort. And I've seen that software that you're using where it's giving you sometimes garbled words and you have to go back and you have to edit the word. And obviously would love to see that software improve so that the decoding is faster for you. But given the effort that's currently required to use the device, has it changed your relationship to speaking and what you feel is worth saying out loud?
Absolutely an asset because without this, I am not able to operate a personal computer with any level of independence. I will have to try to ask someone else to move the computer cursor to every little thing. So being able to do both is incredibly important to my independence and my ability to work, or simply call a friend or on the phone.
I think as he's typing more, one thing I'll share.
Yes, but not in the way that you are talking about. I will definitely make the effort to see what I want to say, even if that is an uphill climb.
Mm.
What is different is the fact that this decoder does very well with certain types of sentences and additional context, but do not last well with what I want to short expressions or pseudo words. And this is such a part of my previous way of talking, especially to friends, that it is noticeably missing from my life now.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I remember even when filming, because you're such a funny person and you have all these funny quips, but the software doesn't always land the joke the way that I'm sure you would have done so beautifully before. Although I will say, I don't know if there's anything that's been done differently in the past month, but your voice does sound more natural than when we recorded and filmed just a month ago. Is that the case?
Yeah, his voice has been updated.
It's really noticeable. It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, I know we're about 15 past the hour, but I just, Casey, want to leave it with you. You're sitting in front of a room of engineers and neuroscientists. So is there anything that you would like to share with them, whether that's something you'd like to see improved in the device or the software or something the
It
technology?
is from the company 11 Labs.
Ah, your 11 Labs improvement. Great. We love 11 Labs. But yeah, if there's anything that you would like to share to this room of engineers, scientists, enthusiasts, BCI curious people about the device or the software, what you would most want to see improved, um, or just anything that you want to leave us with before we say goodbye, that would be great.
Well, he's typing. I know I'll chime in about one we've discussed previously, and Casey, forgive me if this is what you're saying as well. But the researcher Maitri, who has published and won some amazing prizes out of the research she's done with Casey, is developing a speech to voice decoder that uses the same devices in his head that you all make, but enables him to speak directly. So as everybody's like noticing, there's these long pauses as he's having to go speech to text.
I would like to talk about what I would call the holy trinity of what I would want to improve with this device.
Great.
And
I already like the branding for it too.
Trinity.
Holy Trinity.
I'm guessing one of those is speech to voice,
Okay.
which has a bit more work to go, but is getting closer and
And
closer.
is the idea of the speech to voice to reduce the latency because you're pulling out the text component instead of going voice thought text voice, you're just going thought voice. Is
That's
that
right. Yeah, it's reducing latency, but also allows his own natural expression because it follows whatever he is so he can sing with it, he can, yell with it, whisper, like he can have voice tonality again, which is not a small part of communication.
totally bring back that dark cynicism?
That's right.
Another is to make this technology wireless. So consumers do not need to have a pedestal or two rising from their head.
Working on it.
Yeah.
Not me, but the team. Yeah.
I'll say one that he's probably not going to say is well, he might say it's about transportation, but just to say most people who with ALS who use a device are using a Toby device, which has really limited use outdoors.
And Toby devices are the eye
That's right.
tracking
Yeah.
devices.
And a lot of people live in darkness indoors and never go outside because when you're outside, the light makes it impossible for your pupils to be read. And so having the ability to go outside and still communicate would be the grail.
Yeah.
It's really like that would be amazing.
Get him out in front of the lake. The
Yeah.
tree.
One of them is to make this truly portable, which is going to come down to computer power and battery storage.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Finally, I hope that the hardest challenge is this to move this from brain to text to voice to a model that is brain to voice directly, making instantaneous translation a possibility that would enable real life, in-person conversations that would mimic the real thing.
Mhm. How far away do you think we are for that being a reality for you, Casey?
3 years or less.
3 years or less. Wow. Okay. Well, I can't wait for that moment. Um, Levana, anything that you would like to close us out with, given that you were our other special guest today?
Um, no, I'm just grateful for this time and again for all the work that everybody's putting into enabling people like my husband to talk and to, use a computer and be engaged in the world in a different way and enable their families to connect with one another in a easier way. Yeah, I there's so many different issues we touched on. I just welcome a further conversation and to continue to talk about, some of these pieces. Like you asked, like, what do you want people to know? And it's like we live a really isolated life. Like it is hard for us to get out, as I have said. We are very busy. As I've said, we don't have a lot of time. So it's like in the middle of the night, in the waiting periods, in between caregiving tasks, when I'm like flooded with all of the things I wish everybody could understand about this new life that I'm living that is so different from what I previously understood people in my situation go through. And on behalf of ALS spouse caregivers, like there's a whole world that we live in that is deeply hidden and kind of falling through the cracks that I didn't even know existed before this life. So um, it's hard to know what exactly to say or summarize about that entire experience, but to just be given the opportunity to attempt to, I appreciate that.
It's important. And also, I am so grateful for all of the incredible brains on this call in research and engineering. Uh, they're solving really hard problems, and I think we have a poverty of purpose in the workforce right now, with so many people getting paid to optimize ads and sell sneakers. And so to know that there's people out there who are signing up to do the really hard, grueling work that is not always immediately gratifying because research takes a very long time.
Yeah.
Uh, it I'm just always so grateful for these teams, both at UC Davis and BrainGate and everyone at Blackrock, and we just keep plugging away. But it's talking to you guys and hearing your story that keeps everybody saying we got to keep going. We
Yeah.
got to keep going. So thank you. And for
Thank you.
everyone watching, again, I want to please remind you, if you feel called, to share the GoFundMe link to support Levana and Casey with their incredible high costs of keeping him alive. We would be so, so grateful. So share the link, donate if you can. And we will definitely have more conversations like this in the future. You have invaluable, both of you, invaluable expertise that the industry needs to hear from. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Taryn.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be sure to see you both soon, I'm sure.